All right, welcome back, everyone. Today we're doing something a little different, something really special. We are going to dive deep, and I mean really deep, into just one sentence, a single phrase Joseph says in the court of Pharaoh. Yeah, it's a line that, if you just read it, it sounds pretty simple, maybe even a little humble. But what we're about to unpack is that hidden inside these few words is an entire masterclass in cosmic engineering. It's a complete protocol for how to interface with a hostile system and bring it peace. Okay, let's get into it. So here it is. This is the phrase, Genesis 41:16. Pharaoh is totally freaked out by his dreams. He brings in Joseph and says, "Hey, I heard you're the guy who can interpret dreams." And Joseph's response is, "It's not me. Elohim will answer with the peace of Pharaoh."
And you have to understand, every single word here is a precision tool. I mean, why the name Elohim? Why not the big one, YHVH? And why lead with shalom, with peace? This isn't just Joseph being polite. No way. This is strategy. This is Joseph activating a very specific divine protocol for a very specific outcome.
So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we're going to set the scene, really try to feel the tension in that courtroom. Then we're going to get into our big analogy for the day, divine names as different computer operating systems.
From there, we dive into the really juicy stuff, the deep mechanics, mapping the exact Sephirotic circuitry that Joseph is tapping into. We'll look at Pharaoh not as a man, but as a system, a final boss. We'll contrast Joseph's method with Moses, and then we'll wrap it all up to see what it teaches us about, well, speaking the language of creation itself.
All right, let's go there. I want you to really try and picture this. We're in the Grand Hall of Pharaoh. The scale of the place is just immense. Golden light is streaming through these massive windows high above, and the air is heavy, thick with incense and just the sheer weight of royal power. This isn't just a throne room. It's the command and control center for Egypt's entire spiritual and magical grid. And the first thing you'd notice in this massive hall is the silence. It's deafening. All of Pharaoh's top magicians and wise men, the Shartumim, they're just standing there, defeated. They were supposed to interpret the king's dream, but all their spells, all their wisdom, their connections to all the dark arts, nothing. It's all useless. Their entire system returned a 404 error. That silence, that's the sound of total failure. And that failure creates this tension that's so thick you could cut it with a knife. You can almost hear this low, vibrating hum in the room. That's the sound of a king's anxiety. A man who literally believes he is a god, who controls reality, just got a memo from the universe that he absolutely does not. His whole world is shaking. And into that room, a room just crackling with failure and tension, in walks Joseph, a Hebrew kid pulled straight out of a dungeon. And when he opens his mouth, something amazing happens. The entire vibe of the room begins to shift. He doesn't boast, he doesn't chant some spooky incantation. He just offers this simple statement of peace. And with those words, you can feel that dissonant hum in the room start to quiet down. The tension just dissolves. Which brings us right to the heart of this whole thing. Why these words? This wasn't a lucky guess. This was a calculated, perfectly precise diagnosis of the entire cosmic situation. Joseph knew exactly what frequency to broadcast on, which protocol to use to connect with this incredibly powerful and hostile system without getting immediately rejected. It wasn't magic, it was engineering. Okay, so to really get what Joseph did, we have to lay down a foundational idea. I want you to think of the different names for God not just as names, but as different operating systems, like Windows and macOS. They're distinct ways the divine interacts with the world, and they each have their own rules, their own firewalls, their own levels of access. This right here is the absolute key to Joseph's choice. Think of the name Elohim as a public API. It's the set of rules for how divinity shows up inside the laws of nature. It's a protocol that any system, even Pharaoh's pagan magic-based system, is built to recognize. It's compatible file format.
Exactly. Whereas YHVH, that's like having root access. It's the admin password. It's the level of divine will that can completely override the laws of nature. If Joseph had walked in and tried to use that name, Pharaoh's whole system, his firewall, would have just screamed access denied. It would have been seen as a hostile takeover, not a helpful communication.
And to go one level deeper, the Kabbalists teach that the universe itself has different modes. At this point in history, the cosmos was in a state called katnut, or smallness. It just means that the full, transcendent light of the divine was sort of hidden. It was operating undercover, working through the strict rules of nature, the system of Elohim.
And that was Pharaoh's whole world. The ancient sources tell us he wasn't just a king, he was a master sorcerer. He was an expert on this exact operating system. He knew the universe was in Kutnut, and he recognized the power of Elohim. But that higher admin level of YHVH, he totally denied it. So Joseph had to speak the only language the system could even process.
And this quote from the Zohar just lays it all out. It explains that the whole power structure of Egyptian magic, this whole dark net that Pharaoh was running, was basically parasitic. It was siphoning its power from the outer shells, the dregs of the Elohim system. It had zero access, zero influence over the pure, root-level power of YHVH. Which means, by using the name Elohim, Joseph is doing something absolutely brilliant. He was logging into Pharaoh's system using a recognized username and password. He was essentially saying, hey, I'm on the same network you are, but I have a much higher clearance level and a direct, uncorrupted line to the main server. Okay, so that's the what. Joseph used the Elohim protocol. He used the right login. But how did he use that login to produce peace? I mean, where did the peace come from? For that, we've got to pull up the schematics. We need to map the flow of energy through the Sephirot, the fundamental circuits of reality. So, the whole circuit starts up high with Bina, which means understanding. Think of Bina as the cosmic womb, or maybe the divine architect. It's where raw, infinite potential gets structured into the laws of nature. And the name that represents that function? You guessed it, Elohim. So Joseph is tapping the signal right at its source. Now, one of the main channels that energy can flow down is Gevura, pure, strict judgment. In mystical terms, its color is red. It's the fire of consequences. Now, if Joseph had channeled that unfiltered energy, it would have been totally destructive. It would have fried the system. And that's exactly what he needs to avoid. But here's the genius move. Joseph isn't channeling that raw red judgment. He's aiming for peace. So to get peace, you have to take the fiery red of judgment and balance it with the flowing white of mercy. And the place where that happens, the cosmic central processor that harmonizes those opposites, is called Tiferet. And what do you get when you blend them? You get green. And the state that it creates? Shalom. Peace. The exact word Joseph used. It's incredible. So we have the protocol, Elohim, and we have the desired output, Shalom. But how does it get delivered? It gets delivered through Joseph himself. Because on this map of the Sephirot, Joseph embodies the channel of Yesod, the foundation. His entire spiritual makeup is designed to gather up that perfectly balanced green energy from above and funnel it directly into the physical world. He's not just a character in the story. He's a living piece of cosmic hardware. So let's just step back and look at the whole schematic. It's beautiful. Joseph, the agent of Yesod, logs into the compatible operating system, Elohim, which is rooted in Bina. He very intentionally sidesteps the raw red energy of pure judgment from Gevura. Instead, he pulls down the perfectly balanced green energy of Shalom from Tiferet, and he channels this perfectly calibrated energy packet right into Malkut, the kingdom, the court of Pharaoh. It's just a flawless execution. Now let's flip the camera around for a second and look at the person on the receiving end of all this, Pharaoh. It is so important to understand that this guy is not just some clueless monarch. The ancient texts are clear. He's a powerful and extremely knowledgeable gatekeeper. In this particular encounter, he's the admin of his own reality. He is the final boss. So if we were explaining this to our kids, we'd say it's like a video game, right? Joseph walks into the final boss chamber. But it's not a fight. It's a dialogue challenge. He gets a dialogue tree. Option A. Thus says Yahweh. What happens? Psst. Access denied. The boss turns red. The battle music starts playing. It's on. But Joseph is smart. He chooses option B. Elohim will answer with peace. And what happens? You hear that little affirmative ch-ching sound. Connection established. The boss's defenses go down. A peaceful resolution is now possible. Joseph just gained access to the system's control panel. He picked the one and only dialogue option that avoids a fight. And now for the really deep secret, the hidden system vulnerability. The Zohar reveals something absolutely mind-blowing. Pharaoh's entire magical system, his power grid, was drawing its energy from the last two letters of the name Elohim, the letters Yud and Mem. And what do Yud and Mem spell? They spell me. The Hebrew word for who. Are you kidding me? It's incredible. Pharaoh's fatal flaw, the very source of his power, is literally a question mark. His whole paradigm is based on the aspect of the divine that conceals itself and forces you to ask, who is really in charge here? And that's exactly why, generations later, a different pharaoh's automatic response to Moses is, Mi Yahveha. Who is Yahveha? He's confessing the built-in limitation of his own operating system.
Wow. And that insight is just the perfect bridge to our next point, because now we can really see the massive difference between Joseph's super subtle, precise approach and the overwhelming force that Moses is going to have to use later on. Joseph's method was a key, a perfectly cut master key. His mission was to stabilize Egypt, to guide it from the inside, to save not just Egypt, but the whole world from this coming famine. He had to work within the existing system. So he used the right name and the right intention to gently unlock the door without breaking the lock. It was an act of pure interfacing. Moses' job, though, was the complete opposite. He wasn't there to stabilize Egypt. He was there to shatter its system of slavery and get his people out. He didn't need a key. He needed a hammer, a sledgehammer. His opening line, "Thus says YHVH," wasn't a password. It was a root-level override command. It was a command from a higher authority that the Egyptian operating system had no way of processing. All it could do was resist and eventually crash. So you see, both methods were absolutely perfect for the job at hand. Joseph needed to cause minimal system disruption because his goal was to become the system's new administrator, its prime minister. Moses, on the other hand, needed to cause maximum system disruption. He had to crash the server to get the data, the people, out. Different missions, different tools. Okay, so as we start to bring this incredible story home, let's zoom all the way out. What is the profound, practical takeaway from all of this? What does Joseph's cosmic diplomacy teach us about how we should live our lives? I think the core lesson is this. Every single human interaction is a form of cosmic engineering. What Joseph teaches us is that the key to having any real influence, to creating any real change, is to first take a moment and understand the underlying protocol of the person or the system you're talking to.
Right. You have to ask yourself, am I speaking a language this person can actually hear? Am I trying to communicate love using the language of judgment? Am I showing up with a hammer when what's really needed is a key? Joseph's genius was his ability to diagnose the system and deploy the exact protocol that was needed for a peaceful and productive resolution.
And so, we want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. If divine names are really cosmic protocols, if different situations require different languages, then the question you have to ask yourself is, what language is my reality running on right now?
What are the operating systems of the people in your life, of the challenges you're facing? Are you using the right protocol for the right situation? Understanding that is the first step to becoming a conscious co-creator of your world, just like Joseph was in his.
Thank you for joining us for this complete journey through the Part S. We hope these ancient truths help you and your family improve your own dimensions this week.
If you enjoyed this full chapter deep dive, please like, subscribe, and share which part of the journey touched your soul in the comments. We'll see you in the next chapter.